Not a single battle was fought during the 22 days of fighting. A former Israeli foreign ministry official said there was no war. Hamas sat in its bunkers and came out when it was all over. So what did happen in Gaza? The record is pretty clear, at least the military record is pretty clear. Israel began the attack the first week with what was called the air assault on Gaza. And by the end of 22 days, there had been about 3,000 combat missions over Gaza. All the planes came back. None were down. In fact, none were even damaged, which is not too surprising because the Palestinians had no anti-aircraft defenses. It took as much courage to fly a combat mission over Gaza as it does to shoot a fish in a barrel. At the end of the first week, Israel launched what it called its air and ground offensive. The Israeli soldiers were equipped with special night fighting technology. Hamas couldn't even see them. So, what happened in Gaza? In fact, we have very expert testimony, the very best kind of testimony, the most unimpeachable testimony. We have the testimony of the Israeli soldiers who were in Gaza during those 22 days. After those 22 days, many of them gave personal testimony, eyewitness testimony, to their experiences. And here's what they said. Soldier, there was nothing there. Ghost towns. Except for some livestock, nothing moved. Soldier, most of the time it was boring. There were not really too many events. Soldier, I did not see one single Arab the whole time we were there, that whole week. Soldier, everyone was disappointed about not engaging anyone. Soldier, usually we did not see a living soul, except for our soldiers, of course, not a soul. Soldier, go ahead and ask the other soldiers how often they encountered combatants in Gaza. Nothing, no one. Soldier, there was supposed to be a tiny resistance force upon entry, but there just wasn't. No battles in Gaza. No fighting in Gaza. No enemy to tangle with. No enemy in the field. But that's only half the story. The other half, you should look for yourself. All you have to do is go to your computer and your search function, enter the words breaking the silence. And if you enter those words, a document will come up, a collection of the testimonies of the Israeli soldiers. And then all you have to do under the search function is enter the word insane. And if you enter the word insane, you'll see it comes up once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Insane, insane, insane. Soldier after soldier after soldier says, Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. Israel used insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. No enemy in the field, no battles, no engagements, but Israel's using insane amounts of firepower in Gaza. One soldier said, This was firepower such as I had never known. There were blasts all the time. The earth was constantly shaking. Another soldier said, on the ground you hear these thunderous blasts all day long. I mean, not just tank shelling, which was a tune we'd long gotten used to, but blasts that actually rocked the outpost, to the extent that some of us were ordered out of the house we were quartered in for fear it would collapse. The Israeli soldiers commandeered Palestinian homes. From the homes, they're firing into the distance, but the firepower is so intense that the ground underneath them is shaking, and they're told to leave the houses because the houses might collapse on them. So what did happen in Gaza? Actually, the soldiers themselves came up with the most illuminating, the most telling metaphors. One soldier said, it felt like hunting season had begun. Sometimes it reminded me of a PlayStation computer game. Another soldier said, you felt like a child playing around with a magnifying glass, burning ants. Now, I was a kid. I'm not proud of it, but I had my magnifying glass, focused the rays of the sun on those ants in the anthills and turned them into crispy critters. But I was never so delusional, I don't think, as to believe I was engaged in a war with the ants. And in fact, it was a very apt analogy, a child with a magnifying glass burning ants. One of the tools of the trade of the Israeli military is, of course, its white phosphorus shells. And Israel dropped white phosphorus quite promiscuously in Gaza. I had read, of course, there are many references to Israel's use of white phosphorus in its previous engagements. I had never really read the details, but this time I was reading through a report which described in clinical detail what the white phosphorus looks like. White phosphorus reaches a temperature of 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, 800 degrees Celsius. As Oprah Winfrey might say, try wrapping your mind around that. 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So what did Israel do with the white phosphorus? Human Rights Watch published a report called Rain of Fire, and it found, and now I'm quoting it, Israel repeatedly exploded white phosphorus munitions in the air over populated areas, killing and injuring civilians and damaging civilian structures. It dropped white phosphorus on a school, a market, a humanitarian aid warehouse, and on hospitals. It dropped white phosphorus on Al-Quds Hospital. It dropped white phosphorus in Al-Wafa Hospital. According to Human Rights Watch, the hospitals were clearly marked, and there does not appear to have been fighting in that immediate area. About 1,400 Palestinians were killed during those 22 days. About 4/5 were civilians, about 355 or 58 were children. 13 Israelis were killed, of whom half were combatants. 13 were killed, of whom 10 were combatants. And of those 10, about half were accidentally killed by Israeli soldiers themselves, what's called friendly fire.